So good morning, everybody, or midday, I should say. Hold on, at the meeting room. We're here today for the manufacturing expert panel discussion. We have several partners here that I'll be introducing, and I'll let them do a short introduction of themselves. My name is Casey Seaborn, and I'm representing behalf of On Technology Partners. So just quick instructions and the rules of everything we're going to go today. So panelist introductions will take about 5 minutes per panelist. They will use that time to explain who they are, what they do, and what value they can provide to the manufacturers. If you have any questions and you want to have a question, please raise your hand with the virtual hand that you're able to raise on here. We will call those questions in order and we will answer them in order. And for our panelists, if you could do just for time constraints, try to keep your answers to approximately 2 to 3 minutes. That would be wonderful. When it comes to the drawing for our winner of the $200 Amazon card, that'll be completely random. You must be present to win. So if you're not here right now listening to the words out of my mouth, you're not eligible to win. And you must provide company contact information in order to win the participant. So that way we know where to send the gift card to and where to send the gift to. Any questions on this? Awesome. So I will first by starting by introducing Bryan from RoviSys. Bryan, if you want to go ahead, the floor is yours while I let everybody else in the meeting.
Yeah, that sounds great. So I'm Bryan DeBois. I am with RoviSys. We are one of the largest independent system integrators in the world. We have about 900 engineers globally, about 11 locations around the world. I've been with RoviSys for about 20 years now. We focus specifically on OT, or the operational technology. So we operate primarily, we always said within the plant walls. Of course, with the cloud, that all goes out the window. But that's kind of our area of expertise is those types of solutions from the plant floor, all the way from the controls, all the way up to integrating with ERP and business systems. We don't work directly on business systems or anything like that. We do everything kind of other than that, below that. My role as Director of Industrial AI is specifically to focus on AI, ML, and advanced technologies and how we can apply those to our manufacturing and industrial customers.
Thank you, Bryan. So next on, we have Chris Gay from FocalPoint Coaching Excellence. Chris, if you want to go ahead and give your 2-minute elevator speech.
Yeah. So my name is Chris Gay. I'm with FocalPoint. I have 30 years of small to medium-sized business experience, and I help my clients in the areas of business development, growth, strategies, team management, time management, and things of that nature. My clients on average experience double, or in some cases triple digit year-over-year growth, and they generally work 250 hours a year or less on average. I'm sorry, they work 250 hours less per year on average. And so I've been a coach for 5 years now, and thanks for having me on today.
Pleasure all ours. Thank you. So Emily, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself now.
Yes, I'm Emily Smayda Kelly. I'm a labor employment attorney, and I've been practicing for over 20 years in the public, private, corporate, and nonprofit space. So I've been and seen everything, a lot of experience in the in-house space, specifically working with small business owners. And I currently am part of Kel-Lume Legal Consulting, which is a firm that I started 3 years ago as an entrepreneur myself. And I have been working with medium to small businesses through their transitions in all aspects of labor employment, as well as their transactional work. And I'm in the world of mergers and acquisitions right and left lately due to this new pandemic. Again, Emily Smayda Kelly with Kel-Lume.
Thank you. Very good. So Ray, you're up next. Glad to hear from you. Thanks, Emily. Oh, you're on mute right now, Ray.
All right, I guess that would be the word of the century, right? You're on mute.
Yeah.
So that being said, I'm Ray Nejadfard. I'm the Dean and Executive Director of Manufacturing at Tri-C. We are pleased to announce that we were probably the first college, or one of the first college in Northern Ohio, and also probably in the Northern USA that provided the curriculum, labs, and also all kinds of different things for smart manufacturing. What I bring to the table, or and above being a part of higher education and creating technicians and engineers for smart manufacturing, is that I have 33 years of experience in the industry, in the operation and manufacturing, in the aerospace, landing gear, forging, casting, and also, vacuum cleaners and international business. And glad to be here to be able to help out.
Always excited to work with our partners from Tri-C. Thank you, Ray. That was very good. And of course, the main man hosting the event, Ken Fanger. You can go ahead and introduce yourself now.
Hi there, I'm Ken Fanger with On Technology Partners, your partner in productivity. We are really excited to be doing this. I have, through my 10KSB experience with small businesses and with the manufacturers, heard that they had questions. They don't know what Industry 4.0 is. They don't know how their technology relates to that. So we are here to help those companies understand, how can you deploy your technology? How can you build OT on top of your current infrastructure? How do you better improve your infrastructure to be able to be successful? How do you do it in a way that's reasonable and understandable? So On Technology Partners has the great pleasure of working with a lot of the companies that have been on here and being a partner with many of them to help manufacturers be successful. So I look forward to all the questions that we're going to have and working with all the panelists here to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. So if you have any questions, like I said, you can either put them in the chat or raise your hand to start. Obviously, this was a good introduction. Thank you to our panelists for your time today. So we'll get started. I know one of the first questions, oh, hold on here, let me make sure I get the screen in the correct place. So I guess this can be a first question for Ray. Obviously, with the industry standards and understanding the 32 plus years of experience, what is the difference between the Industry 4.0 and lean manufacturing that we hear the terms? There's obviously the two different terms. What would the difference in your opinion and or your experience be?
Well, I think as a lean manufacturing, it's something that's been around for quite a while. And basically it is concentrating on the eliminating the waste as far as defect, overproduction, waiting, transportation, inventory, motion, so on and so forth. And it is basically every aspect of manufacturing try to become as effective as possible. The reality is that Industry 4.0 is super enhancement, if I can put it that way. It's a super enhancement for lean manufacturing. It would allow any operator or any manager to be able to take a look at everything just in time. I can be in my office and know that 500 feet from me, the machine is down. In the lean manufacturing, that doesn't happen. And Industry 4.0, it brings a lot of different things to the table through IIoT, that it allows, efficiency, more productivity, better quality, and also utilization of the assets.
Great explanation. Anybody else on the panel? I want to open this up on any of these questions. Obviously, if I address somebody, I want everybody in the panel to feel like they have the opinion. Bryan, Chris, Emily, is there anything that you'd like to add in regards, or Ken, to Industry 4.0 versus lean manufacturing in your experience?
I mean, one of the things that is going to be very different is Industry 4.0 is going to have a lot more of a technology bend to it. You can be lean manufacturing without necessarily embracing a lot of technology to do it. Now, technology through IoT and other things can make lean manufacturing much more efficient. The more information you can get, the better you can do it. But so there is going to be, with Industry 4.0, a heavy technology push. And I think you're going to see in the industry, that's where the successful companies are going to have to be successful in the future.
Yep, agree with all of that completely. The way we've looked at it is lean manufacturing has been around for a long time. There's a lot of rigor. There's a lot of methodology there. Those practices of looking for optimizations, for looking for waste or looking for efficiency, that's going to lead to the application of technology. And really, that's really what we call Industry 4.0 is the application of these advanced technologies, the blending of the physical, the virtual, the biological, all into one system. And that comes out of, certainly can come out of those lean manufacturing methodologies.
Any other comments? Anybody else on this question? So to kind of progress from that question, now this could be a question for Emily. Obviously, within technology, you're going to see more teleworkers, remote workers. You're going to have that blend in the manufacturing area of you have your back office operations working potentially remote for unforeseen circumstances or just for efficiency. How do you have that management between teleworkers and then your on-site workers?
Really interesting question, and it's been forced upon us, so to speak. And so in the HR world, which I aid a lot of the time when I'm working with bigger entities, we already saw this coming. The telework was going to be the future. And even HRs, a lot of the employment issues that you fall upon with working together were supposed to be eliminated. And so, we were kind of seeing it from many, many miles away. Who would have known the pandemic would happen and force it upon us? I mean, that's really what the difference is. What's been interesting is that the managers that have embraced it have been really the keys. They're the ones that are like, you have to trust your employees. I guess that's what it comes down to, is there's a trust factor there. And that trust factor was not seen. And I will say, even in my industry, in some of the bigger firms downtown, you saw partners say, oh my goodness, I have to actually rely on my associates, which you would think in a professional atmosphere that would be a given. It is not, unfortunately. So that has been kind of an interesting twist. Also, making sure that you have the technology at your fingertips. One of the things that I did when Kel-Lume Consulting came into existence, I made sure I could do everything remotely. And that was something that was a changeover for me 3 years ago. And so when COVID hit, I had no changes. I was already working with technology. I was already working with, over a phone. I mean, this Zoom is a little bit more resourceful. I have to say, I went through a major contract with my co-consul recently, and I love it. GoToMeeting was fantastic to actually go through and goes through everything, but that's where the difference is. So it's really the management that have embraced it has really been the key. I'm seeing some of my smaller manufacturer companies that I support that are very much of the mindset, we do a lot of this stuff offshore anyways. Yeah. And so why can't we trust our employees to do the logistics from their home? There's so many different monitoring systems now that tells you exactly when you're on, when you're not. In my other world of CLEs and everything else, they ask you questions every couple of minutes to make sure that you're watching, which is almost better than in person. I'm going to say that out loud too. So, the telework aspect of things, it was coming. It was allowed in a lot of different, more progressive workspaces, but now it's a reality. And in all honesty, that's the future, 100%. And so it's really how you deal with things in that aspect. You have to manage differently. I'm going to say you have to manage differently. And so that's something that I have worked with my companies that I work with on a normal basis. And with all this quarantining and everything else, it makes sense. It's a safer workplace for that reason too. So I'm seeing the employers going on the opposite side of being more cautious and being really supportive of telework. Telemedicine has been out there for years, and now this is the opportunity to really use it.
Did anyone else on the panel want to comment on this? We do have a question from the audience. So does anybody else have a follow-up on this?
Yeah, Casey, I want to follow up on that because I agree with a lot of what Emily said. And the one thing that she really said that I want to drill down on is you have to manage differently. I mean, that really is the mantra for 2021 moving forward, because here's what's happened to a lot of us as managers. So I come from a service background. I had 3 Roto-Rooter plumbing franchises, and they were in 2 different states. I had one in Texas. I had 2 in Florida. And what a lot of managers do is they manage based upon what they can see. They measure what they can see. And you can't do that when your workforce is doing remote things. So when it comes to setting your KRIs, your key results indicators, and your key performance indicators, you're gonna have to make a shift. It can't be based upon what you see coming off the product line. It has to be from what you have to shift it to what you can measure remotely. And it's gonna be more about how smart people are working and how more efficiently people are working versus how much they are working. And that's really important. The one thing I would contradict Emily on maybe just a little bit, what I'm seeing with my clients is there's some of them, not all of them, but there are some of them that are attempting to migrate back to their offices because they are losing the productivity. It's difficult to work from home. I mean, we're seeing it now. You have to be disciplined, but they're also losing that team interaction, that team feeling. And so that's a real fine balance that they're trying to walk between being safe, working at home, and also having that sense of team.
Absolutely. Definitely need to be flexible in the current environment that we're faced with and moving forward in 2021 in the business environment. So we did have one question. If Pam, if you could, I'll ask you to unmute. You can go ahead and ask your question to the panel whenever you're ready.
Yes, I just had a question. I'm from Tri-C. I'm an instructional designer, but I have an engineering degree and worked in a steel mill for 15 years. The new in Industry 4.0 lean manufacturing, is the panel foreseeing the companies having to train in that, or the schools having to graduate students who fully understand all of that? You know, I'll date myself with ISO 9000 and things like that, that none of that was part of your education in a university or even a technical degree or associate's degree. And I just wondered where everybody fell on, is it a shared responsibility? Will it become more of a schooling, or, you know, who will end up bearing the brunt of having to have a prepared workforce?
It's a great question. Thank you.
Hey, Casey, can I take this one off first?
Sure, absolutely.
Pam, the answer is yes. It's going to have to be a combined effort, just because the reality is that when it comes to some of these systems and things that you're talking about, the kids are, because here's what, so I have a kid, I have a 17-year-old, and he's getting ready to go, he's looking at colleges, but the reality is that he would be better off monetarily by going and learning a trade than he would going to college. That's just the reality. I mean, he's going to walk out of a college with $250,000 worth of debt. And if he learned if he went and became a plumber, for example, he could make almost $300,000 in that same 4-year period. So it's going to have to be, in my opinion, it's going to have to be a concentrated effort on the parts of the schools and the parts of the business owner to work together in concert to make sure that the changes that are coming down the pipe are going to be taught to the students, because they're going to have to learn them somewhere. And the best way for us to do this is to work together to make that happen.
I definitely want to hear Ray. Thank you, Chris. I really want to hear Ray's feedback on this too, obviously being on the education side with the industry knowledge. Go ahead, Ray.
Sure, Casey. One of the biggest things I want to mention, I mean, as I mentioned, we're one of the first ones to create this smart manufacturing curriculum. That curriculum was basically byproduct of working with the industry. We were in a cube or in a bubble trying to figure out things that it is not related to the industry. That being said, there's 2 important things that most manufacturers are questioning. The 2 top question was, where should I start? Where can I get people to help me out in order to be able to implement? So I'm going to echo basically what Chris said. It is a shared responsibility. And I want to explain one thing as far as community colleges and also the universities are concerned. We supposed to have advisory committees, which they are from the community and from the manufacturers, from the service companies, so on and so forth. It is with their input that we put our curriculums together. And that's why we have this system of checking every semester with those, industries to make sure we do the right things. So definitely it is a different set of knowledge that's required for smart manufacturing. And I think schools and industry are responsible to work together to make that happen. And I want to thank you, a few of the industries that actually helped us by developing the smart manufacturing. They actually gave us scholarships for the students to get in them because they believe what's going to come out of there is going to definitely help them to improve their quality, their output, and their bottom line.
Absolutely. Any other panelists? Go ahead, Ken.
Oh, I was just going to say, Bryan, why don't you share how companies, how they train up? Because obviously when you're doing the OT, it's important to make sure that the people there are able to advance as well.
So you cut out a little bit, Ken, on that question. Can you repeat the question?
Oh, just how do you get your customers trained up? And am I still breaking up?
No, I think I got it. So, yeah. So obviously, part of the smart manufacturing rollout, you're rolling out new technology. We always say that manufacturers are typically about 5 to 10 years behind the rest of the world in terms of technology, and that's just the nature of manufacturing, right? If they're not making product, they're not making money. So they're not going to bring down the line for every newfangled technology that comes along. However, this is a pretty big revolution in terms of the technologies that we're using on the plant floor. And so training becomes a critical part of the whole thing. Now, the one thing I will say, having been in those training sessions with operators, with millennials mixed with boomers and the whole 9 yards, is that across the board, what we've seen is that they're pretty receptive to it. They're open to it. They're excited about these new technologies. When you've got a millennial, we just put in a system last year to replace a DOS-based OEE system. When you got a millennial and you had to walk across the plant floor to get to it, there was no kiosk next to the machine. When you've got them walking across the floor to use a green screen terminal, they welcome, a modern, MES with a kiosk right next to the machine. So they're excited about it. And, the good news is, to kind of address Pam's question, is that you can't really do anything wrong. What we're talking to our clients about is the wave of millennials is driving the adoption of these technologies. So whatever, you can't possibly train them wrong. They already are coming in used to instant access to information. They're used to mobile devices. They're used to web interfaces. They're used to, these advanced technologies. And actually, when they walk into a facility, it's kind of a bucket of cold water when they see some of the technology that we're still running 30, 40, 50 years old. So training, they're embracing it. And as far as what you can do, I would say the one thing I would say is, and this is across the board in terms of engineers coming out of school, including the ones we hire, is we would love them to just understand manufacturing concepts a little better than they do. It doesn't even have to be smart manufacturing, but just the concept of raw materials and value-added processes leading to finished goods and just some of those high-level processes. We would love to see that because we end up having to teach them that, but we're also used to doing that, so it's not the end of the world. But that'd be kind of my take on it.
Any other follow-up feedback from the panelists on that question? Awesome. No, I think that's a great representation of really how you marry the operational technology to the upgrading the technology. Like you said, there's no wrong way to go about implementing it. If you implement something new, as long as it's efficient and brings to your production, it should be a good net positive as a whole. I do want to talk and ask, since we talked a little bit about technology, I want to ask, what are the risks surrounding technology? And this would probably be for Ken and then probably Bryan too. What are some of the risks around technology that manufacturers face, whether it be hackers or ransomware? Just what are some of those risks that manufacturers should be aware of?
So the first thing that I think is always important is to remember that the technology is there to support the operations and the productions on the line. And IT companies think the technology is the most important thing by itself. So when you're looking at how you protect your technology, the real question is, what does it do? System, and you lose it, and you can't get raw materials to keep that line functioning, your production is in trouble. If you can't ship your product out at the other end, your production, I think there's always a disconnect. People think that technology is something separate. You have your server in a back room. The server in the back room is not the most, it's keeping that line going. If you have operational technology, it's making sure that those systems are responding back to the servers to give you that real-time information so you can keep being productive and keep those people. Because you don't want people, we worked with Eaton on a project, and there was a point where they couldn't get the line information running and they were down for an hour. Well, Eaton being down for an hour was millions of dollars in cost. And so, you know, the smaller manufacturers may not be millions of dollars, but it is a cost. And if you can't keep yourself producing because you got hacked, because you got ransomware, you're going to lose production. What's important for everybody to remember is it's all about production time.
Yeah, and so to build, I mean, 100% agree. I mean, the risk is always bringing down the line. And it's something that we talk about and we hammer into our newer engineers, you know, day in and day out is what is the risk right now that we're going to bring down their line? However, there's some insidious kinds of, with this adoption of new technology and this IT-OT convergence that's happening right now, there's some insidious things that people don't even necessarily recognize bring that risk with them. So I've got customers that are, you know, especially the smaller manufacturers that don't have a big IT investment already up to this point. They want to put in, let's say, an MES system, a manufacturing execution system, and they're like, well, let's just put it in the cloud, because we don't want to put in a whole server farm here and on site. And I said, okay, but keep in mind, the more that you use that MES, the more we build it and develop it and integrate it into your day-to-day process, it becomes a critical part of your manufacturing. And to Ken's point, if that thing goes down, then are you going to be able to continue to make product if that thing is down? And so when they look at that and they realize that all they have to do is lose their internet connectivity, and suddenly their whole operation goes down, that suddenly starts to change the conversation. Now, I've got customers who have said, well, look, we understand that risk, but we're willing to put in triple redundancy internet. So we've got fiber and we've got cable and we've got satellite as a backup, right? So that we can continue to operate. And we're willing to bear that cost because it's still less than us, building out all of that on-site infrastructure. So that's fine, but at least you've thought through that. Cybersecurity is another thing. I kind of push back against this whole IIoT, this whole hype around this IIoT thing, because one of the premise seems to be, let's poke a bunch of holes in your plant control network to get that data out to the internet. And that's something that, I've spent 20 years of my career locking down these plant control networks. And in the early 2000s, when we started, there was a lot of double nicks and some really horrible practices because nobody knew any better. And so we've done a lot of work to lock these plant control networks down. And there's so much risk in a virus or any kind of infiltration that happens there that can truly, lead to loss of life and limb. So, it's a constant battle. But anytime, so when you've got this IT group that is coming into the OT space and they've got some big ideas about unlocking the data and unlocking the value on the plant floor, and we are in full support of that. There's just, you got to be very careful about the risks involved with that. And my recommendation, and I know it's a little self-serving, but bring in an OTSI. It's great to have an ITSI at the table, but bring in an OTSI who are experts down on the plant floor and make sure that we can do it in a secure and in a common sense kind of way. So.
And not one group alone is the answer. Like Bryan said, bring in the workforce players, bring on the OT players, the IT players. You're answering the question as a whole, an IT problem that needs to be fixed.
So that kind of leads me into the next question. Obviously, as you talk about, if I'm a manufacturer, one of the stressing points would be, who do I work with? Do I need to work with our own IT department to implement Industry 4.0 and some of these technologies? And really, this might be a good question for Ray and then obviously Bryan. Where do I find help? Where is the first case that I should go? Where is the first resource I should look? I know I need technology. I know I want to integrate. Something is keeping me from being as productive as possible on the line. Where do I go?
I guess I started and then I let Bryan continue on that one. I guess one of the important things I want the manufacturers in Northeast Ohio know is existence of Team Neo and specifically a smart manufacturing cluster, which it works within the top 18 counties of Northeast of Ohio. So they basically can help out small, medium-sized, or even large-sized companies, not only connect them to all the people that Bryan was talking about, as well as a kind of like run a questionnaire and see where they're at. At what level they should start. So that gives them access to a bunch of solution providers such as Bryan in order to be able to kind of help the companies to get to where they need to go. So we're actually lucky to have that team right in Northeast Ohio and located right in Cleveland. So that's one of the suggestions that I got.
Yeah, and so I would completely +1 for Team Neo. Yes, that's a great first step for anyone who's looking at doing this. And I kind of gave it away in the last question, but yeah, I mean, bringing in OTSI, we are, these Industry 4.0 digital transformation projects are big. They're multifaceted. There's a lot of people at the table. We're very used to working in that type of environment. We don't come in and try to run the whole show or anything like that. We're very collaborative in that respect. The other thing is that, the size that we're at, we actually have built over the years a pretty good network of other, companies and partnerships that we work with. So, on technology partner, so we've got IT companies that we can bring to the table, and we've got legal types of partners that we can bring to the table when there's those types of questions. And we've got training partners that we can bring to the table. We've got ERP and business system partners that we can bring to the table. So we've got a pretty good network of vendors that we can bring in on those types of discussions. And so, but I would say the one thing that would be I think kind of a fool's errand would be to start one of these projects without OT present. If you put everything in the hands of IT, and I've got great respect for IT, but I don't think they necessarily are the right people to be leading a project like this down on the plant floor and everything that's involved down there. So it should be a partnership, it should be an IT-OT partnership in leading those projects.
And I think that's important to remember from the manufacturer, run and do it off on your own. You have to learn a lot more that way. I know when Bryan and I have been in connection, you want to be good at what you do and then find experts for what you don't. So manufacturers may not be good at IT, but they're also not necessarily good at OT. You want to make sure, like we're working with quite a few of the utility companies on their SCADA systems. Our part of it is making sure that the network is secure down because somebody hacked it. But as far as when you get into the RTU devices and actually controlling the power flow, we don't want to be making those calls. We don't want to say this is the right, because we're not experts. And a mistake, nobody may attack that grid. Transition of power when it needs to be transitioned, it's a disaster. But it's not an IT disaster, it's an OT disaster. And having those right people makes a difference on that.
Absolutely. Any other feedback from anybody on the panel on that question?
Yeah, Casey, the one thing I wanted to make sure that, and Ken and Bryan kind of hit on it, but I want to just kind of bring it back up to the 30,000 foot level. When you're bringing these experts on, because I've seen this happen way too many times with different kinds of experts, it's important for the manufacturer, the decision maker, whoever that person to be, to start with the end in mind. Be very clear with your providers what you want to have happen, and go in. Where I run into this most is with search engine optimization and things on the internet like that, where business owners know they need it, but they don't have any expectations of what it should do, what it should look like, and how it should work, and how it should fit for their business and their business concept. And Ken and Bryan really did a good job of explaining that, but I just want to bring that back up to the 30,000 foot level, and really encourage all the participants to start with the end in mind and make sure that they're clear on what the expectations are.
Thank you for that.
Last little thing I wanted to add on that is we're smaller projects. Get that trust factor. One of the big things, want them to try things smaller with us, kind of, we call it the crawl to run conversation. Don't replace your entire plant floor. Maybe work with just one machine, or unless you know how OT, don't be jumping in full force. And I think that's what scares off a lot of manufacturers is a lot of these companies come in and say, we're going to replace your entire floor operations. Well, I'm not sure I want my entire floor operations changed until I know if you can do it for my press. This small project, get to trust the people, then you can move forward. You can do a lot of things and you'll be more comfortable moving forward and spending the money. A $20,000 project versus a $2 million project. If $20,000 goes bad, you walk it off. $2 million, you may not be in business the next year. So is start with, and then be more liberal after you get going.
We do have a question from, I believe it is Rick Earls from Team Neo. Rick, go ahead.
Yeah, just some comments then too, based on what we're finding. Can you hear me? All right, good.
Yep.
So, and in fact, I had a nice conversation with Bryan earlier today. The general characteristic of the manufacturers in Northeast Ohio, we've got basically 7,200 of them. Most of them, though, 97% of them are considered small to medium enterprises. They're mid-market. And frankly, they're not talking about big systems. The ones that are really exciting, they're not there yet. And this is a gross generalization, but a lot of them don't know what they don't know. But what they do know is they know their business really well. So they have a tendency to want to talk in terms of applications. Again, how are you going to improve my asset management? How are you going to improve my working with my inventory? How are you going to improve things like OEE? They know that stuff relatively well. So they frankly need a little more help even establishing expectations. Again, like you were saying just earlier, you want them to be able to talk about what the end game looks like, but they don't even have the basis or the ability to do that yet. So they really need to be coupled with and we're finding out more successful, they need to be coupled with a solution provider they feel comfortable with. And in fact, even ideally, it's nice if you can find a solution provider, sort of a contractor that already has relationships with a number of service providers, so they can be that one face to the customer. And that solution provider then has all these other nice networked capabilities, and they can bring all the information together that's necessary for a complete solution. The other thing is that typically they want to start with a pilot project, maybe $10,000 pilot project, and collect data for about 3 months, and then make sure that there's a payback in there, feel more comfortable about that. And frankly, again, the solution provider, so they can work with that manufacturer, walks them through this whole process, even helps them even adjust their culture, starts working with their senior management. So they're all learning by immersion. Then that seems to be the most successful way, or at least starting with the types of manufacturers we have in this region. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Absolutely. Oh, hold on. Give me just a second. Somebody's joining. So I kind of want to take it to the next, obviously, Chris, you had brought it back to that 30,000 level. Industry 4.0 and updating manufacturers is for one main criteria, obviously, to grow your business. And this could be for Chris or Emily. How do you envision, in a world of COVID with so many different factors drawing workforces away, how do you keep, the millennials and their work attitude and their productivity engaged in your environment in such, tumultuous times?
Ladies first.
Well, yeah, because that's a hard one. That's a very difficult one to answer. And it's not just millennials, it's everybody. How do you keep everybody motivated right now? I'm going to say it. I mean, we have how many generations in the workforce right now? We have 5. And
Yep.
so you start thinking it that way. I mean, you have, you know, it's a whole nother world. I think the millennials have been a little bit more resistant, meaning because they are being a little bit more monitored, they're not used to that. They're used to being able to work at any time, whenever they feel like it, at all different things, and use this technology to do it. And so it's been kind of interesting. In COVID times, you would think that they would be the most malleable, or the most, able to kind of weather the storm, and they haven't been. They've been the most resistant, because now everybody's teleworking. So, where their charm is that they never turn off. They're always available. And, one of the biggest things that I've been dealing with some of the small businesses that I work with is trying to get their workforce back. Unemployment, you added on that $600, I'm gonna say it, and then that $300, and that was looking way better than coming into work and exposing themselves to a pandemic. So that has been kind of a big, interesting twist, has been unemployment. Who would have thought that millennials would be more willing to go ahead and collect a check every week than go into work on the floor and actually get things done. And so that has been an interesting cultural twist. You have your baby boomers that are like, forget this. I much rather come back, because I hate this Zoom thing. And so they are more apt to come back into the workforce quicker than your millennials that are used to this, technology and FaceTime and everything else. And their attitude is, I'd much rather be collecting my check. So it's kind of been an interesting twist, where we thought at the beginning of all this, what we thought was temporary. Let's be perfectly honest. We thought it was going to last a couple of weeks. When I told everybody it was 18 months, start thinking 18 months back in March. People looked at me like I had 3 heads, and unfortunately I was right. Because from March, not even from October, where we now know that it was in our lovely country at that point as well. So I think that's been kind of an interesting eye-opener from a generational standpoint. And I love talking about generations. I could talk about it for 5 years, because I think the next 2 generations are a trip too. Your alphas and your Zs, haven't be raising one of those. So it's been kind of an interesting kind of twist on the whole technology front, where you thought the millennials would be the most apt, the most fluid, the most agile. They have been the most resistant. So I don't know, Chris, you might contradict me again on this one.
No, I'm not going to contradict you. I'll tell you what I am seeing, is specifically with the millennial generation, because I get asked this question a lot. How do you work millennials? How do you work millennials? It comes up in every single coaching session, every single interaction at some point. Here's the thing with millennials. Every one of us at some point when we graduated from college said we want our work to change the world. We have all said that at some point. Millennials were the first generation to say it and mean it, because they had this for a couple of reasons. First of all, they're staying at home longer. They're living with their parents longer. Their expenses are lower. That's part of it. But the other part of it is, very simply, there was always that expectation that if I left this job today, I can get that next job tomorrow. There was always that expectation. What we're seeing now is it's an interesting fundamental shift. I'm wondering how long it's going to last, and if it's going to last, is that the millennials that are employed, as this pandemic goes on longer, and as the unemployment benefits that Emily alluded to earlier have started to fall off, i.e. the $600 from the federal government, the millennials that have been employed are more likely to stay put in their current jobs. If they have been working through the pandemic, they're more likely to stay in their current jobs than they have in the past. For example, one of my clients, he hires almost exclusively that millennial generation. And he told me, he said, when he gave performance reviews last year versus this year, there was a marked difference. The employees were happier. happier that they had a job. There were less complaints, less bickering. Part of that is because they've been remote. Part of that is because they're just thankful to have a job. And it's been really interesting to see that dynamic shift in that millennial mindset about how, I'll be interested to see how that works moving forward. But I think a lot of the things that Emily said about people wanting to stay home and get paid for sitting at home is absolutely true. And I think that that's going to be a real tough problem moving forward.
Well, and then I'll add to that too. You know, this younger generation, and you know, we've all been there. We forget, but we've all been there. But this generation also, everything's a lot cheaper.
Sure.
Everything is closer.
Yeah.
You get on a plane, you go anywhere. Not
Right.
now. So that'll be kind of interesting to kind of see. And you have to realize that the lifespan of an employee of a millennial is 2 years. That's it. You know why? Because they earn enough to not get out of the basements of their household. No, so they can go travel to Europe for a year to 2 years. That's the reality of it. So they're doing everything that their grandparents can't do because their health is not in the way of it. So they see that and they say, this is ridiculous. I'm getting on a plane and I'm doing whatever I want to do. And that's what they do. They work 2 years. They're out for 6 months to a year. They come back. And that's why there's gaps in their resumes. You don't even think about it. Like, why are these gaps? It'll be very interesting since they can't travel and they're worried. And it'll be very interesting where they spend their money too.
Well, and also to kind of tack on that as well, Emily, is the reason why they were able to take that 6 months to a year and go travel is, one, you're right, they do have the financial wherewithal to do so because their expenses are next to nothing. But secondly, they knew that when they came back from Europe or wherever has been, wherever they got done traveling, there's going to be a job. There was going to be a job opening for them. Now they're realizing, wait a minute here, that may not be the case. These kids have never been through a real recession. Yes, 2007 was a blip. Some of them remember it, some of them don't, but they've never been through a real decade-long recession.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Obviously, if anybody in the audience, I want to make sure we have some time. We have about 8 minutes left. Is there any other questions that have, manifested from the audience? Anything that wants to answer? Just feel free to unmute your mic if you'd like to ask one. No one? Okay, cool. So I guess if there's a final piece or a final question for this, what is that first step for these manufacturers? They want to make more money. They want to produce more units. They want to streamline their efficiencies. I know we've talked about bringing in a partner, but what's that first step should they do internally to make some of these things happen under Industry 4.0 and the advancement? Rick, go ahead.
Yes. So we, that being the Team Neo and the cluster, have come up with another gross generalization, but it's come up with a 5-step process to get involved in what we call the journey. But that the first stage is preparation, and you'd be surprised how simple some of that concept is, but how tough it is to attain. So again, the first thing to do is you have to establish some basis to make a decision as to what that impact is going to be on the business. And again, if you're starting from a place where you don't know what you don't know, you really need some help in that regard. So there's some high-level aids. In fact, I could probably, Ray could talk a little bit more about that then too. But generally what you want to do is, again, give them one of the best slides we ever show anybody is we can give them a nice graph that shows them that typically if you're a manufacturer and you're in this market segment and you put in, for example, OEE, you can improve your throughput on average. And I think the one we've got is 20 to 90%. You can improve that stuff. So you start setting expectations first through, again, applications that then drives them to want more information about that. And then if you, again, couple them with somebody like a solution provider that has a lot of this experience in their background and also has a few more tools, visual tools to help them out, that's a very good first starting point. Then you get those two matched teams to start working together and eventually create an implementation or transformation plan. But again, it's all driven by exactly how they're going to go, what steps they're going to take to improve business performance and efficiency.
Absolutely. And thank you for that, Noah. That's a great way to give these, any of these companies that are wondering, where do I start? That's a great way, obviously results oriented. I want to open it up to the panel now for every panelist to give, 30 to 45 seconds of some sort of closing statement, closing remark, and then we will announce our winner. So go ahead, Ken, you can start, and I'll move with what I see on the screen.
Okay, that'll work. So I did one kind of a question about where to start from an IT standpoint. On Technology has a free cyber risk review. So it helps your company to understand where you are. It's a quick process that says, are you exposed? Are you able to have a data recovery situation? Do you know your current state and current position? Because I think a lot of the problems is reviews we've done, the companies don't even realize they're at risk. They don't know that they don't have backups. They don't know how to recover. And they don't know how to make sure their remote employees are safe and secure. So to start that journey, we will send out a link as far as how to sign up for that. But it's a great way to get that first step from an IT standpoint. And then, of course, the training standpoint, and Bryan will go into the OT. And but yeah, this is how we are helping question, because cybersecurity, cyber stability is very important to move to work properly. If your data isn't protected and recoverable, it doesn't matter how far you try to move down the Industry 4.0 or IoT field, your systems are going to collapse under the pressure. And we want to get that ready in preparation for you being ready to take that next step. So that's what On Technology Partners offering here. And I do want to take one other quick second. The SBDC is giving away 15 free hours. If any manufacturer is interested in that, and that's a way to get some free services that's paid for by the CARES Act.
Thanks, Ken. Go ahead, Bryan.
Yeah, so where do you start in the OT space? So yeah, I mean, obviously page one of our playbook is typically an assessment, right? So we've got to figure out where you're at, what projects you've done up to this point. But I'll go ahead and tell you what pages 2 and 3 of our playbook are going to be next. The second page is going to be about data infrastructure and data collection, right? So I walk into these manufacturers still in 2020 that don't have any kind of data collection happening on the plant floor. And I tell them every second that goes by is value data that is just flying out the window, that you aren't collecting any of that, all those insights that you could be having about looking back at 3 to 5 years of data and all the insights that are buried in that, it's all gone because you haven't been collecting it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start collecting all the data. And what we've seen is that, and this is anecdotal, don't hold me to it, but typically you can see just by collecting the data and visualizing the data on the plant floor, you can see about a 3 to 5% bump, just that. All you did was unlock the data that you already had and show people what's there, about a 3 to 5%. The third page of the playbook then is going to be OE. So just like Rick said, there's a reason why it's the leading KPI. There's a reason why it's the #1 project that we are doing, pilot type project, early project that we're doing with customers. It's the reason why it's most customers' first step on digital transformation. Availability, throughput, and quality. All 3 of those metrics are crazy important. And Rick told you some of the amazing ROI that you can see just through OE. And it's an old metric. I mean, it's been around for a long time. Everything else can build on that then. But these are great first steps. Ken made the point, get some early wins. These are low-hanging fruit that you can do with very, very minimal downtime, almost no downtime to put these types of systems in, a little bit of training, and you get it going. Downtime tracking on your equipment's part of the OEE package. I mean, it's instrumental how big that initial first step. And then you've got all this momentum, you've got all this ROI. Now you can start looking at the moonshot type stuff and the big, multi-year rollouts and things like that. But those are great places to start. You can start them at one site, one line. So that's kind of the first 3 pages of our typical playbook.
Thanks, Bryan. That was very valuable. Chris, you're up next.
Yeah, my advice to you guys on a starting point would be to really look and assemble your team. And I'm not talking about your management team, although that is important. You know, if you're, especially for the small to medium-sized business owner, who are you surrounding yourself with? You need a good IT guy. You need a good an OT guy. You need a good employment lawyer and a good human resources person. And you need a good coach. No business owner in the history of business has ever survived working in a vacuum. You need these people, and it's so critical that you bring in that team of outsiders to help you. As Ken said earlier, you don't know what you don't know. And the nice thing about having a team of outsiders that comes in and helps you with your business is that they're going to tell you the truth. They're going to be honest with you. Whereas some of the people that work for you, that their livelihood is dependent on you, may not be as candid with you as you need. So I really do encourage you to leverage these outside resources to the best of your ability so they can help educate you on what you don't know and what the consequences could be, because there's nothing scarier than being blindsided by something you never saw coming.
Thank you. Absolutely. Emily, you're up. Final remarks.
Assure your employees that change is okay. Okay, that is the biggest thing, because when they see outside consultants come in, they get scared. They think they're going to lose their jobs. They're of the mindset of the old days where there's technology replaces people. And so you really seriously have to work with your employees to say, no, this is to make your life easier, production better, so that we can build and we can actually do other things. We can build and we can grow. This is not to lose your job. You're not going to be replaced by a robot, so to speak. You're actually we're streamlining the processes so things are easier in your life so that we can grow, we can move on, and we can be a better company overall so you can stay here longer with us and grow with us. And I think that is sometimes missed, especially with the word change. And that is something to make sure that you get a grasp of. Make sure your internal communication is saying that and you authentically say it. I think that's really important.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Ray, your closing remarks, and then we will announce our winner.
Hey, I appreciate it. I guess I'm going to echo what Ken, Bryan, Chris, Emily, and also Rick mentioned. And that being said, I want to make sure that the manufacturers understand that they don't have to be large in order to start this process. They don't have to be all fully automated in order to start this process. This process can be used by any manufacturer, and recognize, as everybody mentioned, there is help out there for you. And also understand that you can't go alone in this path and be successful. So it would be important to tap into the outside sources and take advantage of what's available.
All right, and without further ado, first and foremost, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody. If you have any questions, you can feel free to take down my contact information. If you want to get in contact with any of the lovely panelists today, feel free to reach out to me or Ken, and we'll be sure to get you in contact with them. Ken, if you would like, I'll let you announce the winner.
Make my life harder. Okay. The winner was Lewis from Parker Lighting. So we will be in touch with you, and we will get you your $200 Amazon gift card.
Great. Thank you.
We're excited to have had you here, and we thank everyone that has been on this event today, and we would love to about maybe doing events like this coming in the future, and if this was helpful. So I want to thank everybody that has been in attendance and everybody that was on the panel. This is a great panel to have, and it was very informative. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody, for participation today.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Bye-bye.